So, Nick and Tim, let's kick off with you, Timbo, from your presentation. I guess the supply question is the big question in Australia. Seasonally, how well, we've had a good year this year, how well does that set us up for 2021 in terms of increasing our production?
Yeah, it's a good question, Josh. So we've had a great 2020, or a lot of regions have. Unfortunately, the outlook for the northern wet season is also really favourable. So nationally, a lot of regions are looking at being set up fairly well for the season ahead, and should have a fairly sizable feed bank to grow out livestock. How it feeds through to production is it's probably comes through in multiple ways. Like I showed in a couple of those charts, that means we can put more weight on the animals we've got, so we have a bit of a production boost from that end. But it also means that producers have an incentive to run more livestock as well, and potentially carry over some breeding stock for future years. So it's a bit of a balancing act. When we see increased pasture availability, we do see more weight gain, and to utilise the animals we've got, but we also see more animals being carried over. In terms of how it plays out in production, it's a bit of a balancing act, but what we do see probably with a bit more clarity is the type of animals that are going to come through in 2021. If we have ability to hold on to more breeding cattle, we'll probably see fewer cows and the like come through. And similarly, we'll see reduced mutton relative to lamb production probably in 2021 as well. So it's probably more the class of animal that we can actually gauge with a bit more certainty than the overall tonnage that's going to come through.
So, Nico, not to pull you into a history lesson here, but you're well placed to do it. We're about 70% of market share for sheep meat in the Middle East region. Why, and obviously dominant in comparison to our competitors, why have we been so dominant for such a long period in the Middle East market? Why is it so important for us?
I guess it comes down to, Josh, it's one of our oldest markets.
Right.
You know, we were faced with a number of challenges in the 70s around sheep meat. We also had a developed trade here on live exports for many years. You know, the office, when Andrew Cox said earlier that we've had a presence here for 50 years, we have. The initial office was the Australian Meat Board, which was located in Tehran in the late 60s, early 70s, somewhere there. Not that I was around then, I'm not showing that much history. So when it was a government body, when MLA, as it's morphed into, it was a government body, it was located in Tehran. As challenges developed there, they moved the office to Bahrain, and it was there for a long time. In that period, it was all around the live exports, which we were servicing into the region. Big markets, Iran was a big market, Saudi Arabia was a big market, the Gulf was a developing market. And then we've been in place as the markets progress. So as the Middle East markets matured, it's changed. The development of cold chain, the development of cities, development of retail, importers, distribution networks, and then in recent times the development of hotels and tourism. We've seen the product change, and I guess because we've had that long-standing relationship, and when you travel the region and you hop in a taxi, or you're more so Ubers these days, you'd be in any country and they go, "Where are you from?" And you say, "Australia." We're known for two things: it's lamb and cricket.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, we've supplied, and I guess it comes down to our exporters have done the job well too. It's the consistency, it's the availability, and we deliver. You know, we have got some seasonal challenges in Australia, but we do deliver 52 weeks a year, and I think that's what's really held us instead over that time.
Yeah, it's interesting when we were holding this seminar series, you know, out of a lot of the markets that we service globally, the Middle East was certainly a priority that exporters wanted to be a part of, which is fantastic. So, Tim, over to beef, chilled versus frozen over time into the market. Have we seen a change in the amount of chilled product coming into the Middle East market from a beef perspective? or has that remained relatively static?
There has been a fairly gradual shift to more of that chilled product. It's probably coming from a couple of different angles. The market's been becoming more sophisticated with modern retail and modern food service, which that chilled product suits. And we've also seen some more of that commodity frozen beef being displaced by the likes of Brazil and India. So there's probably a couple of angles there, but yeah, generally there has been an increasing shift to chilled product in the region. You might have something to add to that, Nick.
Yeah, the shift to chilled. One, it's been the availability and access to that carcass trade, which is all chilled. That's really increased the big size chilled. But to handle that, you've got to have the development of cold chain, and that's happened. I mean, there's been a progression from live to frozen to chilled product. We've had, early on in the chilled trade into this market, we had some big issues with product spoilage. And that's a cost to the industry. It's a cost to the importer. And then if he puts a claim back, it's a cost to the exporter. So it's an impact. So when you look at all that and assess that and invest some of that money back into infrastructure, then the headache goes away and the product gets better, and the support for chilled becomes more apparent. So I think it has been a development of everything over the years.
And Nick, you mentioned freight disruptions. Are we seeing many freight disruptions still maintained out of Australia, or we're getting back to normal? There is the capacity to get our product into the market.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's capacity on flights. So I'm hearing that there is increased cost, even with the IFAM subsidy. There isn't basically seeing a cost to the importer and exporter of a double in that freight cost. So that alone will take out certain volume. There's a price point which has to be met, and if that price point isn't met, then some volume will drop off. So it's more the cost has probably had a bigger impact. There's available space, so you may not get it on the day you want, but you may get it a day after. So there is available space. There has been some challenges with product coming out of Victoria, because Victoria's a much harder and longer lockdown. But I think we're a resilient exporter as Australians. Where there's a will, there's a way. So our guys usually find a way to get the product either on a plane for that business, or we've seen a shift into sea freight where we can. And I guess we're underpinned in our beef trade into this region by a lot of mainly sea freights. A lot of that product goes into that retail, so there's a lot of grass-fed product, a lot of hindquarter cuts, that type of thing that comes in for retail, and most of that is sea freighted. So it was safe, and it's been interesting. I've been on some hookups with different government bodies here in the UAE that have been doing some assessment around the food security and how vulnerable they were over that period. And the Dubai guys are actually quite good, because they surveyed the market, they surveyed the importers, they surveyed how much cold storage is available here and how much product was on hand, and they were comfortable that they weren't under threat as a food shortage, which was great to see.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Tim, last question for you. China, we hear China in terms of consuming all of the global protein, or diverting all of the global protein to them. How big an issue is that globally? For a start, from a global protein perspective, but also from our perspective as an industry, has it the ability to further provide more product to that market, or has it essentially stabled out?
I suppose looking at or reflecting on some of those charts I had showing the kind of export shift even out of Australia to China, there has been that shift. It hasn't probably been as strong as, say, some of the other major exporters in North and South America or Europe, shifting, be it pork or beef, into China. But we have seen a bit of a shift. Interestingly, I think on the sheep meat front, which is most important for the Middle East, I think that shift to China hasn't really come at the expense of being able to supply the Middle Eastern market, looking over, say, 10, 20-year period. China, in many ways, takes vastly different cuts to what we send to the Middle East. So we've seen that growth in China, but it hasn't really necessarily had a huge impact on the trade to the Middle East. If you look at what we send to China, half of it's breast and flap, while the bulk of the Middle Eastern trade's made up of chilled carcasses, for instance. So we haven't necessarily seen a shift away from the Middle East just because we've seen that rise in the likes of China. And it's a bit of a similar story on beef as well.
That's great. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. And Nick, I'll let you do closing remarks. But just before I go, my final plug, there is plenty of red meat, as Tim mentioned there. The Exporter Showcase is manned by Australian red meat exporters. I encourage everyone on this call to get down there, have a chat to them. We'll leave the platform open for another hour or so after the official closing remarks. But gentlemen, thanks very much for your time, and I'll jump off now.
Thanks, Josh.
Right, thanks a lot, Josh.
Thank you.
And thanks, Tim. All right, so that wraps up our presentation segment of today's trade seminar. But as Josh said, we have a number of exporters that are online. Also, we will have the Middle East office will be also online. So if there's any questions, there will be Sam, Spencer, and myself will be sitting in that area. So please come and visit and say hi. It'd be good to see some of you, chat to some of you, and take the opportunity to chat to the exporters and take the basically just take the opportunity to network, and we'll see how this platform works. So it's the first time we're actually doing it on this platform for the Middle East, so it'll be interesting. Anyway, that'll wrap up our presentations. If anyone's got any questions, please come across to the Middle East office and we'll see you there. But for now, we'll shut down the main stage and we'll catch up with you all soon. Again, thank you very much for your attendance. Thanks for dialing in. It's great that we've had good support and we've seen some great people on here. And I look forward to catching up very soon in person, I hope. The novelty of online meetings and trade seminars is interesting, but we probably don't want to see it long term and we prefer to see you face to face very soon. So thank you very much. We'll talk soon. Bye.